Now it's better. Thank you very much, Jose.
Okay.
Please, you can continue. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I was telling you that indeed building linkages between large enterprises and small enterprise can be an important tool in your toolbox when you're looking at different incentives in order to promote formalization. It is good for to take in consideration the part of the informal operator that may decide to take the decision to formalize in order to access these market opportunities. But also from the point of view of a multinational enterprises, it is also good for business in the sense that it's showing responsible business conduct, is showing contribution to local economic development in the country of operation for multinational enterprises. But in the context of an environmental transition, it's also good to show shorter value chain. And also there's a big push for circular economy when we think about a just transition and a transition to a better environmentally sustainable practices. An example of that is the establishment of Carrefour in Côte d'Ivoire a few years ago. When the company decided to start operation in the country, the company had as an objective 100% local sourcing of fresh product. In order to achieve that, the company had to provide training in different areas in order to meet the quality standards, but also in terms of company practices. So a lot of training and capacity building was provided to the local companies in order to integrate the supply chain of Carrefour. A few years ago, when we documented the case of Carrefour with the national focal point for the promotion of the MNE declaration in Côte d'Ivoire, the company had integrated 270 local suppliers in its supply chain. So this can be an interesting incentive for formalization when you have such a relationship and such a commitment from multinational enterprises that are implementing in the country. And as part of their contribution to local economic development and formalization, many enterprises are putting forward a comprehensive strategies that contribute to SME development in their country of operation. What this package may include, sometimes it's a commitment for a long-term partnership to purchase product and services with a local supplier. Also working with government or local organization in order to support access to finance so that these enterprises can reinvest and upgrade their business facilities. So microfinancing, access to credit, access to grant for small businesses. This package, also put forward by large businesses or multinational company, may include training and capacity building in areas such as financial management, digital marketing, quality control. Également, also technology transfer and support, sharing knowledge and tools that multinational companies are doing to increase their efficiency and innovation. They may also invest in infrastructure such as transportation, digital networks, for instance. Um, for them also, for multinational enterprises, this could be part of their CSR initiative. Some of them are putting forward some entrepreneurship programs, business incubator. This could be part of the package on community supports they are putting forward. And it's also part of what they put forward as sustainable practices, and also how they use their leverage in order to support small businesses in adopting sustainable business practices. So many of them are also not only providing training on business services, but are also training their suppliers on how they can better align on international labor standards, for instance, or more generally with other international reference framework in the field of responsible business conduct to ensure that through their business relationship, their suppliers are also aligning with these reference framework in the field of responsible business conduct and are contributing to the realization of decent work through their own activity and through their business relationship. So the ILO MNE declaration, which is the reference framework in the field of responsible business conduct, is actually giving some orientation to multinational companies or enterprises more generally, how they should deal with this issue of business linkages and formalization. So the ILO MNE declaration, as the reference framework on RBC, as as an objective to encourage the positive contribution of multinational enterprises to socioeconomic development, to give guidelines on the realization of decent work, but also to minimize the negative impact multinational companies could have on development. It is also the tool the ILO is putting forward to provide guidelines to different stakeholders, including enterprises, on how, through their operation, they can contribute to the realization of decent work. And as such, you could see that at paragraph 20 of the MNE declaration, you could see that the orientation provided is that enterprises are encouraged, multinational enterprises are encouraged to give consideration to the conclusion of contract with national enterprises for the manufacture of parts and equipment, the use of local raw materials, and the progressive promotion of local processing of raw materials. But that also the MNE declaration make a direct reference on the contribution of business to formalization, highlighting both the role of the government and of business, saying that the governments should develop and implement an integrated policy framework to facilitate the transition to the formal economy, and that multinational enterprises and other enterprises should also contribute to this aim, recognizing the role enterprises themselves are also providing in order to support formalization. So in this context, realizing that business linkages can be a powerful tool to help you in your effort to promote formalization, I believe it is important to quickly highlight a few trends that are existing. First, the fact that we see internationally an increased momentum to reference to international instrument on responsible business conduct. This includes the Tripartite Declaration of Principles concerning multinational enterprises and social policy, the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises, the guiding principles on business and human rights, and the SDGs. This can actually be a useful tool in order to promote responsible business practices and also formalization in your effort of putting in place an enabling framework. We also see a changing discourse on trade and investment agreement. More and more, we see a reference to such instrument in trade and investment agreements that are signed between countries, and sometimes even investment contracts that are signed between a multinational enterprises and a government where the investment is being made. So these reference framework are increasingly being used, providing an enabling framework to also promote formalization in this context. We also see a changing legal environment in the sense that an increasing number of home countries of multinational enterprises are adopting measures and initiatives in order to clearly highlight what are their expectations as home countries in terms of their multinational enterprises operating abroad. So some of these initiatives or guidelines refer to the MNE declaration or to other instruments, and some of them are legally binding, such as due diligence legislation, and they require the respect for decent work and fundamental principles and rights at work by an enterprises, but also through its business relationship, making formalization also part of the discussion. When we speak about due diligence for the realization of decent work, we see that ensuring formalization is part of the equations to make sure that human rights are respected through business relationship. So all of these development are creating an enabling framework to promote responsible business conduct, but also increase perception that these international framework is good for productivity, for competitiveness, but also becoming more and more a prerequisite in order to access market opportunity. Another trend that I want to highlight is the fact that in the African region, we see number of countries that are adopting what we call local content legislation. 17 African countries have legislation to strengthen the linkages between multinational enterprises, between investors and local enterprises. Sometimes with some challenges in ensuring their application, but are highlighting clearly their expectations to the investors coming in the country in terms of how they should be contributing to local economic development through business relationship. And on my slide, I've put a few examples. Angola, Botswana, and Ghana are among the countries that have adopted local content requirement through legislation in Africa. I would like to conclude by telling you that this trend is also seen in the context of the promotion and application of the MNE declaration. Formalization and building linkages between large national enterprises or multinational enterprises and local companies is a priority for the focal point for the promotion of the MNE declaration in Côte d'Ivoire. And if I seen well, I know that one of the focal point, the one for the employers, seems to be in the room with you. And I would like to say also that in the case of Sierra Leone, there's 4 focal points that have been appointed for the promotion of the MNE declaration, one representing the Ministry of Labor, one for the employers, one for the workers, and the 4th one is actually the director of the local content agency. So indeed, the MNE declaration in this context is also used in order to promote local economic development and to contribute incidentally to formalization. I would like to conclude by saying that the ILO Help Desk for Business can provide answer to some questions in terms of business that would like to know more about how they can, by putting forward a comprehensive strategy as MNE or as a national enterprises, in order to contribute to formalization. They can contact the ILO Help Desk for Business. You can see the website and also the email for the direct assistance services. And we are a team of experts that can, and we reach out also to experts in the ILO so that the questions could be, and any question that could be answered in this regard. So I will conclude with these words, but happy to answer any question you might have.
Well, thank you very much, José, for this very comprehensive presentation. As you might recall, this morning, one of the key messages of the employers group was to include informal workers in the value chain of multinational enterprises, so to leverage on the supply chain of multinational enterprises. And the presentation of José clearly explained to us the different mechanisms, whether it is by supplier partnerships or by training and capacity building. We can clearly see that multinationals have a key role to play in helping informal workers to formalize. She has also presented to us different tools, the M&E declarations, which includes guidelines to also facilitate transition from the informal sector to the formal sector. Quickly, because we need to manage time efficiently, I will take 2 questions. Any question in the room? Edouard, 1 question or comment after we continue to the next presentation. Very short, very quickly, because...
Alors, juste ajouter à ce que José a dit, j'ai eu la chance de conduire le projet Carrefour. Carrefour, pour arriver à ses fins, a dû ouvrir en son sein un centre de formation dédié à ses fournisseurs, pour les mettre à niveau, pour les coquer, afin qu'ils puissent intégrer ces exigences. Je pense que c'est important. Deuxième élément, le local content, beaucoup de pays ont pris effectivement des normes, des législations, mais on est confronté à un problème de capacité des acteurs locaux à profiter de ce dispositif. D'où l'intérêt de la mise à niveau de nos acteurs au niveau local. Et les multinationales ont un rôle majeur aussi à jouer à ce niveau-là. Mais le gros problème, c'est la capacité de nos gouvernants à négocier efficacement avec les multinationales et à assurer le suivi de l'impact de ces accords qu'ils mettent en place avec les multinationales. Et c'est pour ça que le dialogue social en amont, impliquant les employés et travailleurs, me paraît essentiel.
Merci beaucoup. Un deuxième et dernier commentaire aux questions. Madame Saïznou, s'il vous plaît.
Et peut-être Amadou, juste pour dire que Édouard est également le point focal des employeurs pour la promotion de la déclaration sur les entreprises multinationales en Côte d'Ivoire.
D'accord, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Moi, je suis préoccupée par la qualité des contrats qui ont été signés avec ces PME. Dans quelle mesure les syndicats ont été présents lors de la signature des contrats avec ces PME, parce que ces PME et autres utilisent des employés. Quelle a été donc la qualité des contrats qui a été, est-ce qu'ils étaient présents? Parce que c'est aussi un niveau de dialogue social que nous voulons défendre dans la productivité. Nous sommes pour la promotion de l'industrie légère, mais avec les multinationales, il faut faire attention au type de contrat pour pouvoir...
D'accord. Madame Saïznou, c'est une remarque, c'est bien cela?
Oui, c'est une question que je voulais poser.
C'est une question pour José.
Il faudra vraiment veiller, parce que si nous voulons...
Excusez-moi, au fait, je pense que c'est à cause du microphone, j'ai du mal à vous entendre. Vous pouvez mettre le micro. Si c'est une question, la formuler sous forme de question.
Oui, mais j'ai bien compris la remarque, Amadou. Si vous voulez, je peux déjà réagir vu la
question. José, compris?
Alors, je trouve tout à fait pertinente votre remarque. Hein? Et je voulais simplement dire que quand on parle de conduite responsable des entreprises, on parle également d'un autre concept qui est le concept de l'amélioration continue. Donc, on se dit toujours à un certain point, à un certain moment donné, une entreprise ne peut pas être parfaite en tout point. Donc, on essaie d'abord de se dire que plutôt que d'avoir des liens qu'avec des entreprises internationales, on essaie de renforcer le tissu local et les liens avec le tissu local. C'est un premier pas dans la bonne direction. Et une fois ce pas fait, il faut travailler ensemble avec les parties prenantes, avec les syndicats, pour s'assurer qu'une fois que ce pas est fait dans le sens de la création, de la contribution à la création d'emplois, comment est-ce qu'on peut travailler ensemble dans ce concept d'amélioration continue et faire en sorte que, effectivement, on ait des emplois de qualité qui soient créés et qu'en travaillant avec les différentes parties prenantes, on essaie continuellement d'améliorer la situation au niveau que ce soit de la liberté syndicale, que ce soit des salaires, de la santé, sécurité, dans un processus d'amélioration continue. C'est vrai que la création d'emplois, ce n'est pas la panacée, il faut créer des emplois de qualité, mais c'est avec un dialogue social qui est constant qu'on peut véritablement y arriver. Et c'est de la façon dont travaillent les points focaux pour la promotion de la déclaration sur les entreprises multinationales. C'est une institution qui est tripartite, qui fait la promotion du dialogue social. Et c'est important que, oui, de voir la création de la qualité d'emploi, mais également de voir comment on peut travailler ensemble pour améliorer la qualité des emplois.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup, José. Merci pour ces remarques et ces questions. Now let's go to the next speaker, Mr. Dragan, Dragan Rajic, the director of the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises branch at the ILO. Dragan, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? It's okay? Can you hear? Hello?
Hello, Dragan. Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Good. I just
Great.
wanted to have that
Are you
feedback.
are you going to share some PowerPoint? No?
Not really. You know, I actually was going to prepare the presentation, but I was told that kind of remarks are good enough. And now I feel a bit guilty
That's
because
great. No. It's perfect.
Jose has already set up the benchmark very high for me. So I'll try to entertain you even without PowerPoint, but apologies.
No, that's great to hear. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so yes, so my name is Dragan Radic. I'm chief of MSME branch. So I lead the work of the ILO in the area of SME development or MSME development, as we say. So we deal a lot with enterprise formalization, with entrepreneurship and women entrepreneurship, with productivity. We work a lot in the area of value chains development and a lot in the area of enabling business environment. And you know, many people ask me this question when I speak, like, why is the ILO working in the area of SMEs? You know, there are other organizations, you know, like International Trade Center, OECD, the World Bank. Why everybody works with SMEs? So why the ILO? You know, I think that's the wrong question, actually. I think the right question should be, why is the ILO not working even more in the area of SME development? Because if we are to achieve decent work, if we are to achieve social justice, we need to go where the biggest challenges are. And the biggest challenges, when we are talking about low productivity, informality, and poor working conditions, lack of decent work, are precisely in the area of micro firms, small firms in particular, right? So that's the reason why I think we need to be working much more in the area of SME development. There is no doubt about that. Anyhow, let me just focus quickly on three angles here. I wanted to touch really and to tell you a little bit more about what a productivity is and what we see as the trends at the moment and why we are worried about it. And then I wanted to touch a bit more on informality, but very little bit because you're the experts in the room. You'll be talking about it for 3 days, and then to conclude with ILO's approach to productivity through productivity ecosystem for decent work. So that is basically the idea. And you already asked the question, and people answered. You know, productivity, it's when it comes to definition, it relates to the amount of the output that one can produce with all available inputs. So it's very simple, isn't it? It's very straightforward. So when we are talking then about productivity growth, right, we are saying how do we get more output from the given inputs, or how do we achieve the same amount of output, that may be production of something, with less inputs? So it's how do we create basically more with less? That's about productivity growth. So this in itself, it's simple, but let me tell you, everything else then becomes very, very complex. So when it comes to productivity, what do we see in terms of trends globally? I think, unfortunately, the news is not so good. Because in recent decades, many economies have really witnessed stagnation of productivity growth. And this is interesting in spite of all the technological advancement. And no one can understand why that is. There's quite a bit of debate. How come, you know, we've got all this technology and then productivity is not catching up with that? Another challenge, particularly for the ILO, is that we see decoupling of productivity from wages. So, you know, you have a wage growth here, but productivity, it's kind of, you have a productivity growth here, but wages are not really catching up with that. And overall declining of labor income shares in all this, right? And then in many economies, we see that structural transformation is slowing down. So as results of that, rather than labor transitioning towards higher productivity and formal jobs, informal employment exhibiting lower levels of productivity has expanded, as many people are moving, say, from agriculture to informal jobs in the service industry. And that is also a challenge. And then finally, we see that small number of frontier firms, like big firms, are accelerating their productivity growth and reaping the benefits, for example, of technology. But most enterprises, like more than 90% of them, and especially small and micro firms, are not actually harvesting technology and are not catching up with productivity growth. So why is IRO worried about all this? Because, enhancing productivity is really crucial in order to achieve sustainable enterprises and to create decent jobs. Because both of these core elements are really critical for any development strategy, right? And then if productivity growth slows down, then that means that the economy also slows down. And as a result, then we don't have improvements of living standards, we don't have transition to formality as much as we want to, and we don't see poverty reduction, right? And finally, we also know that productivity and decent work are connected, but this connection is kind of complex and it's not automatic. So productivity growth, sure, indeed, can potentially lead to better decent work outcomes, but we know that happens especially when there are strong labor market institutions in place. And then this leads me to another point, which is the biggest elephant in the room that you are people trying to unpack over the next 3 days, and this is informality. 62% of the global workforce operates in informal economy. 80% of all economic units globally are informal, right? And that link between informality and low productivity is often create a really negative reinforcing cycle that is so hard to break. Why? Because informality of small firms restrict access to resources. You can't get finance, you can't get access to market, you can't get skills workforce, you can't get technology. And so you cannot basically, because of that, you can't grow your productivity, right? Right? Whilst the low productivity makes it then more difficult for business to afford to formalize. So it's that catch-22. And then this leads me to ILO approach, which is productivity ecosystem for decent work, because that could be a potential solution. I'm saying here potential solution of breaking this negative cycle between informality and productivity. So the ILO's productivity ecosystem for decent work approach, it basically recognizes that both enterprises and the workers are kind of embedded in an ecosystem in which the drivers of productivity growth are interlinked at 3 levels: at the national level, at the sectoral level, and at the enterprise level. So then the approach tries to integrate relevant interventions across these 3 levels to strengthen the key productivity and decent job drivers. So let me try to be a little bit more concrete here. At the national level, for example, what we would look at through the lens of productivity ecosystem for decent work is the development of some kind of comprehensive strategies and policy reforms to support national development plans, to enhance productivity, to improve decent job creation, to improve working conditions, to actually get enabling environment for sustainable enterprises going, to foster innovation and skills development, for example. We would definitely, as we at the ILO, of course, look at strengthening meaningful, and I underscore here, meaningful social dialogue on productivity and decent work, which would include then possibly alignment of wages with productivity growth and development of industrial and sectoral policies. Then at the sector level, we would also look at sector-specific interventions to address specific challenges relating to productivity and decent work in the high priority sectors. So that would mean, for example, improving the functioning and upgrading and inclusiveness of value chains in those targeted sectors. Then we would want to really see that promotion and development of the transition to formal economy. We would want to strengthen the social dialogue at the sectoral level as well. And then at the enterprise level, we would look at, of course, upgrading the management practices so that business can grow, become more productive, and be more competitive. We would want to see the improvement in working conditions. We are implementing this in order to strengthen again social dialogue, workplace cooperation, whatever the form is at the enterprise level. So you can now ask me, okay, all looks great. In theory, you're trying to work in many levels and address many things, but really, how's that different than other organizations? We have other organizations that are trying to develop and work on policies that foster productivity, right? We have other organizations that are working on training and helping enterprises directly to be more productive. So why the ILO? What is our angle here, right? I would say to you three things. The first one is that this is a human-centered approach. What does that mean? We really need to, as the ILO, we need to deliver to both employers and workers when it comes to productivity and decent work agenda, which means that's not easy. We need to really help enterprises to grow productivity, and we also need to see that productivity growth pays back to workers. So this is when we say the high road to productivity, that's what we mean by human-centered agenda. And the ILO is uniquely placed in the world to do precisely that. So that's the first thing, how different we are and how difficult task that is. The second thing is that this approach to productivity ecosystem is systematic. So that means that we want to really address the root causes of productivity within sectors. We would not come to the country and try to resolve all the problems. We can't do that anyway. But it would be like to unpack the key problems that are constraining productivity growth and decent work deficits in particular sectors that you people would agree what those sectors are. So we don't have predefined interventions. Every country and every sector, of course, is different. And integrated approach, that is also challenged. That does not mean that 3 departments of the ILO would work at 3 different levels. So you have one department working on the policy in one country, then another department works on training in another country. No, this approach demands integrated approach. So when you unpack the problems in the sector, you want to then work on the policy that would help those sectoral problems to be eliminated. And then you want to really address and understand who are the enterprises and the workers in the particular sector, and then only then to develop interventions that are designed for them, that would work for them. So that is basically, in essence, the approach. And I'm concluding here just to say that in line with the priorities of the Abidjan Declaration, we are now piloting this approach in Ghana, in South Africa, in Egypt, that's in Africa. We are also collaborating with PAPA and the African Union and undertaking the assessments of the status of national productivity ecosystem for enterprises in African Union member states. So thank you, I'm stopping here.
Thank you very much, Dragan. Thank you again for your intervention, highlighting the importance of productivity and with a human-centered approach as the ILO is doing. I really hope that this intervention help you to better understand the concept of productivity, but also the link with informality. And unfortunately, too often, informal workers, informal economic unit, they do not have access to the necessary resources, not only to maintain their activity, but also to develop themselves, hence to contribute to the different mechanisms for the collective well-being. I will now give the floor again to 2 or 3 of you. For if you have any questions on the topic, please feel free, questions or comment. I will ask you please kindly to be brief also for time management purposes. Sir, monsieur.
Merci beaucoup. Je suis le colonel Mbarek Diop, je suis représentant du patronat au Sénégal. Je félicite M. Dragon pour sa présentation brillante. Je voudrais juste poser une question. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui nous sommes dans la digitalisation? l'intelligence artificielle est là, qui peut aider à améliorer la productivité. Est-ce que le BIT, dans donc, ses conseils, dans donc, sa stratégie, a pris en compte donc, ce phénomène nouveau et celui qui ne vont pas prendre le train vont rester au quai de la gare. Donc je pense que la digitalisation, surtout avec maintenant l'avènement de l'intelligence artificielle, c'est un problème qu'il faut prendre en compte et voir comment l'intégrer. Juste une petite information, le MAS, le manuel d'amélioration sécurité dans l'entreprise, a été installé au Sénégal et en Côte d'Ivoire depuis une dizaine d'années. Nous essayons, c'est un outil pour améliorer la productivité, pour améliorer les performances de l'entreprise, pour diminuer les taux d'accident. Et nous encadrons plus d'une centaine d'entreprises, notamment des petites et moyennes entreprises.
Merci. So the first comment on digitalization. Un autre commentaire, a second comment, question? No? Madam, please.
Thank you. My name is Violata from ILO Abuja. It's not a question, but to compliment what Dragan has presented on how the productivity ecosystem for decent work approach is also contributing to improved and increased productivity in the informal economy. I'll give the example of Ghana because I don't see the employers and trade unions from Ghana. But that's where we have practical examples on how that productivity ecosystem approach is facilitated formalization in the shea butter sector in the north of Ghana. The baseline was that the producers of shea, the employers, were working as individuals or as families or cooperatives or associations, but they were not belonging to any business umbrella. Everything was just informalized. Equally so with the workers that were picking the shea butternuts were also not organized. They were not part of unions. At best, they were cooperatives. Then looking at the decent work conditions for both the employers and the workers, there were a lot of deficits, and productivity was very, very low when the project started about a year ago. So through the project, as we report now, the employers in the shea sector have been organized into the small medium enterprises into businesses. And next week, they are launching an employers association of the shea sector. Then the unions who were not organized, they've also transitioned from individual workers and they formed a union, which is also going to be launched next week. And these unions are going to affiliate with the umbrella union organization. So those two parallel processes have facilitated transition to formality because the formally unregistered businesses are now registered and affiliated to employer organizations, equally the unions. So I thought, Dragan, you should not finish your presentation without me speaking about how this is translating into practical implementation towards formalization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Dragan, I'll give you back the floor maybe if you want to react on the comments before closing the session.
Maybe just if you could kindly give me a bit more translation. I think I picked it up, but just that I'm sure on the digitalization, please. What was the question?
In fact,
yeah,
the first comment was on Monsieur Colonel. Si je me souviens bien, it was on digitalization. How it was a comment on harnessing digital tools to improve productivity. C'était bien cela. Vous disiez qu'il faut que les outils digitaux soient utilisés afin d'améliorer la productivité. You had mentioned something about that, Dragan. Maybe if you could maybe just re-explain.
Yes. Okay. So what I was saying is that basically, when you look at all the latest digitalization and digital trends, you would expect to see that digitalization is actually driving productivity growth of the countries. But in many cases, the digitalization kind of it failed to deliver on the expectation. You know, if you look at the industrial revolution, the steam engine and the changes that made and so on and so forth, it was expected that digitalization and the use of AI would deliver, but it's not delivering. And there is a debate among the experts in the field and academia why that is. And some people said, you know, it is delivering, but we cannot measure it easily because a lot of our economies are now in the services. So how do you measure the productivity of somebody who works for Twitter or Google compared to somebody who works in the factory and produce shoes? You know, so that's kind of one example. And then you have pessimists who are saying, yeah, you know, but actually what we could harvest in terms of technology, it was already harvested, and up to now with electricity and steam engines and the latest infrastructure that we have, so the digitalization cannot add extra more value. We already done. The jury is out, but at the end of the day, what we try to do at the ILO, I mean, in the enterprise department, we have a number of tools where we are really helping enterprises and small businesses to digitalize their business. And this is part of our Digitalize Your Business, is part of our Start and Improve Your Business toolkit. We see a lot of demand, but again, similar to what the issue is of productivity ecosystem, remember, if you are kind of training just a small business to go digital, and then they cannot afford to actually pay for the data, or they cannot afford to pay for digital services to, you know, e-commerce, it's a problem. So when it comes to digitalization, as when it comes to productivity, we need to work at the holistic, in the holistic and integrated way. That would be my key message. We need to really address the policies. We need to address the infrastructure. We need to address the cost of data, and we need to address then the training and the access to technology altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dragan, again, for this very insightful answer. I'm not going to open the floor, otherwise we're not going to leave this room today. So thank you again, Dragan. Thanks to all of you. I'm going to give the mic back to the MC. It was a pleasure facilitating this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.